Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode on Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. Man, I am so excited for this episode for a couple different reasons. Different from, I know I always say that for every episode. One, I've got an awesome colleague friend here that we're going to chit chat with, and she's actually been on the show. We did a book club kind of group discussion on happiness, and gosh, actually, I should probably go back and read that book with the considering of everything going on at the time of this recording and education. Might be good for the soul. But we're going to do something a little bit different here that's different even on the show. And so those that are watching the video recording, you will see that we've got a screen here of human elements of living and learning. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit of this experimental platform for this episode that I can think of nobody better than Lisa Hawker to be my guinea pig and try this stuff out with. So before we get into all this fun stuff, Lisa, one, thank you for coming back on the show, testing out this random idea that I have. And before we get into that, let's start off and let everybody know, who are you, what do you do, and what in the world do you got going on?
Okay, so I am Lisa Hawker, and I live in Bettendorf, Iowa. I'm a literacy and school improvement consultant and a dyslexia specialist professionally. Personally, I'm a mom to two kids. Addie is 12, Oliver is 10. I have a husband named Justin who's amazing, and I have two dogs. I have a Bernese Mountain Dog named Niles. He's super special. And then I have a German Shepherd mix. So life is pretty busy. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot of moving parts there. At least those are all good moving parts. I can't imagine two dogs. I have a black lab, and she is enough for.
How much does she weigh?
Oh, she's pushing. She's probably around 70.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing like your two big dogs, but still enough to. She still thinks she's a little tiny puppy, which she's not. But she's got all the energy of it, though. That's for sure.
Yep.
So Lisa, I want to thanks so much for coming in on this show, and for the listeners that know who you are, and also for those that don't know. I like asking people this question of, what's kind of your origin story? We're going to talk today about some really cool ideas that you've been kind enough to put together, and we're going to have some fun with that here in just a second. But we're in this world of education. You're a literacy consultant. I know the amount of work you do, but thinking of it through my comic book nerd lens of my Spider-Man and all my superheroes, we all kind of have an origin story, and I know that could be the whole episode of itself. But how have you found yourself into this space, which I think is going to be some building blocks into some of the topics we talk about, where you've got this passion for literacy, you have a passion for education. It's more than literacy. I know that's the major hat you wear among many. How did you get to this place where, this is the work that matters to me as a human?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like, when people are born, I feel like there are just dispositions, that you're just born with. And so I'm also a middle child. I'm also a Virgo. And so I think there are just things that are just baked into my DNA that are like, I like people, right? I like helping. I like people. I loved babysitting when I was growing up. And then when I was in high school, I needed a job. And I was like, I'm going to be a lifeguard, because why wouldn't you want to be a lifeguard when you're in high school? You get a tan, you get paid. But with that, I had the opportunity to make a little extra money by teaching swimming lessons. And so it was there that I actually just fell head over heels with this little boy named Connor, who was 4. And I knew him when he was 4 and when he was 5 and when he was 6, because I taught him swimming lessons all those years. And at this point, I was a freshman in college that summer, and I just realized I want to teach kids. This is my jam. I just love it so dang much. So I was lucky enough to get hired right out of college, and I started as a Title I reading teacher, and then I was a first grade teacher. And through that experience, I was able to do a little bit of like leadership kind of stuff. Like I was the president of the union. I was able to do some presenting, kind of got into instructional coaching, and I just felt like, you know, by this time I had my own kids, and like, life just changes. And I
Right.
felt like my superpower, I guess, no longer was with kids in the classroom, but I felt like I'd be able to influence grown-ups. So I got a couple master's degrees, and I was fortunate enough to get on at the local education agency here in the Quad Cities, where I could utilize my master's degree in adult education, and then went on and got my admin in, or my master's in admin. And I just really felt like I grew personally and professionally working with adults while still being able to like tap into that love of kids with my own kids at home.
I love
So
that.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah. You hit a I would think a really crucial element throughout all that I think probably a lot of people maybe know, but also maybe I think sometimes we don't always realize. And I didn't really. I mean, I learned kind of through. I don't have the same journey as you, but getting and doing some presenting and now doing work at the AEA, that there's some universal things that are similar. We're talking about empowering, teaching, learning kids, and then also adults. And there are also some fundamental major differences when working with adults and kids. And gosh, that could be a whole episode in and of itself now
it
that I'm
really
thinking
could.
about that. But yeah, you're so
Yeah.
right. Like I think it's something that like there are times where I miss the classroom like crazy. Like I'm like, man, I miss like
I
being with
know.
kids and seeing that journey. And I'm like, but I think my calling is in this arena where I still like to be immersed in with the kids and doing that work. But I think there's something else about hopefully, I mean, I feel like, I think we all hope that we're making a difference in the people we impact, but supporting the adults to have that kind of trickle down effect with kids. And it is amazing how life's journey and experience and as you age and everything else kind of sometimes
Yeah.
shifts that narrative around where you think you're going to be. I remember thinking like I'm always going to be in the classroom. Like
Yes.
no one's ever going to shake me. And my classroom now looks a little different. I still believe I'm an educator and have a classroom, but it's not the same of when I started, teaching sixth grade.
Yeah. You talked about this idea of like the impact that you have on adults so that they can have the impact on the kids. And I have a good friend who was a school counselor. And one of the things that she taught me really early on in my career was um, she always said, feed the teachers so they don't eat the kids. So it's this idea of like, I feel like I'm in a position right now where I can feed the adults, right? Like I can feed them, hopefully because they're able to opt into working with me based on interest or based on like a growth area. But like really it's to impact the kids, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I like that phrase. Yeah, I've not heard that. I like that. I might have to steal
Yeah.
that for some of my own frame of reference thinking.
Yeah. Very possible. Yeah.
So let's build upon this in your journey. And so those that are watching the video, you have obviously this whole time seen that we've got Ford colored boxes. And for those that are listening to the podcast version, you obviously can't see that. So let me explain a little bit of what I reached out to Lisa. She has an idea. I want to make sure we do talk about it. That's important and near and dear to her heart and education and builds exactly into what we're talking about. But I also asked her to see if she'd be willing to try a little bit different format. And so I gave her a PowerPoint slide deck with 4 categories for her to throw in ideas. And so the categories are share something that sparks excitement in you lately, like what's kind of stirring your enthusiasm. The second one is to reflect on a recent shift in your perspective. What's an idea or belief you've seen in a new light? Which is a question that I really, really like. And I begged, borrowed, and stealed these ideas from a recent Tim Ferriss podcast. I'll put the link in. I liked him and this author's conversation, so I kind of shifted some of it. So I don't want to act like I magically created these, but that question has really resonated me thinking about my own kind of like journey in learning. The The third category was, can you recommend any influential books, films, TV shows, people? And I've expanded on that. I've been asking a lot of guests recently about something to rant or rave about, and people have been giving some just fantastic TV suggestions, book suggestions, music suggestions. So I wanted to make sure that was in there because that's really fun. And then the last one was to identify an object or artifact that holds special meaning to you. And so in the video recording, Lisa's thrown in some images, and when we'll get to those, we'll definitely describe them so it makes sense to the listener. And what I have, and the way we're going to go about doing this in this experimental journey, is I have a random generator. And so if this actually, the code that I put together in PowerPoint works, one of these topics is going to randomly pop up, and we're going to talk with that. And so the goal is to then connect to life and learning and education, but also the human side of Lisa, and see where this conversation sparks us. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the random generator, and it's taking us to our very first category, in which I have no idea what it's going to
I'm
be.
kind
But
of
it looks,
nervous.
I know.
I know,
They're,
it's so
at least
exciting.
they're your ideas. We just don't
I
know what
know.
idea. So the first one is share something that sparks excitement in you lately, and the category that popped up is human behavior and social constructs.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh, so talk to me a little bit about this. This is
Oh my
a
gosh.
big topic here.
I'm like, why did so one of the things I love about this is you talk, like, these are all so, like, in the moment, right? Like, there are
Yeah.
things that I put in here, particularly, like, the images or whatever that, kind of represent different things in my life. But this is a big one. And I think a lot of what why this is a thing for me right now is just the overall heaviness and, like, the human condition within which we're working, right? So, like, the fact that and this is actually going to tie right into Scarf, like, this whole idea of, like, why do people respond in the way that they do, right? And when I think about the idea of social constructs, just how much that shapes and informs our reactions, our inferences, the values that we hold. And, right now in our state, it's super political with education. And and I'm also watching The Handmaid's Tale, which I know is, like, old, but I'm, like, halfway through season 5. And so I'm just thinking about the constructs of gender and power, and how, even though we're in 2024, I feel like we're going backwards in, like, the idea of, like, equity and human rights. And, like, I just sometimes can't even believe that this is the life that we're living in, where we have worked so hard in our profession and in our lives to provide, like, equal playing fields for kids and adults. And, like, just based on your political power, your positional power, your gender, still, as much as that makes me want to vomit, like,
Right.
that matters. And how all of these people in our state are coming forward, like, never before, to give their voice and, like, their input, and they want to be seen and they want to be heard, and no one cares. It's
Yeah.
like no one cares, because it's self-preservation of, like, the thing that they think is, like, theirs. Do you know what I mean? And it's not even theirs. So the example here is, like, legislators writing bills that impact hundreds of thousands of people, and it's not even their area of expertise, and they're not listening to people who hold the expertise. And in my mind, it's just to reinforce the construct that they value, which to me, in this particular instance, just feels like power. It's like that I have political power, I have positional power, and I'm going to leverage that with everything, regardless of how people feel about it. So that's why I put this in there.
Yeah. It's a good one. There's so much to this. I mean, as you're talking, it rattled this idea that I haven't thought about for a while, and kind of resurfaced. But this whole concept of, like, kids no longer trust the adults,
No.
and
Why would they?
why would you? Like, the things that are happening, because, and whether they understand all the nuance or not here to say that kids understand all the pieces, but kids are smart enough to understand, to sniff out when things are authentic or not. And
Mhm.
that's not just in education, I think it's in society. I mean, you
Yep.
see it in social media, or, like, this idea that we have lost the art of listening. I can have an idea, right? Like we all have our own constructs. We all have our beliefs. We all have things that we hold near and dear to our heart. But I also hope that like we're also willing to hear other thoughts. And maybe as a result of that, maybe I do shift some ideas. And that's where I think like that second category, as we were going through those four categories of things, and I've been kind of like rethinking through like what is for me, I've been going through this kind of like personal journey of like what is my philosophy in education. I found what I wrote that a long time ago, like in 2004. I had to write it for a class or something, an award or something I was winning. I was reading that and I'm like, man, I have really some core ideas are the same. But man, some of these I'm like, oh, who was I? Who was I? Geez, 20 years ago. Um,
Exactly.
like things have changed, and it should. Like things should evolve as you learn and you gain
They
experience. And
should.
so, um, yeah, it's fascinating all over the place right now. And fascinating doesn't always mean
Good.
positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Really, really, really good one. All right. Well, boy, we're coming out hot and out of the gate here with some good topics. So I
They
think
will.
let's see what pops up next. And I think this is a nice thing is to see where the through line
I
and how the
know.
thread goes through here. So, ooh, we're in the green category of identifying an
Oh.
object that holds special meaning. And let's see what we get here. I don't. Okay, maybe this one is
Oh my gosh.
could be deep, but maybe not so hot. We got
No.
what we're looking at here for those that are listening is an excellent album cover that I actually had this CD.
Yeah.
So I was like, actually was like listening to this when I saw your slides. I'm like, oh man, I forgot about this album. But we're looking at Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' greatest hits album. So
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated to know why you put this because not everybody would put some Tom Petty, but man, what a
Yeah.
great musician. So talk to me about this one.
So the reason why this one came up is because, I feel like when you look back through your life, um, there are just like sometimes still frames that just like pop. I didn't even feel like I would get emotional about this.
Mm,
I like connect with music in so many ways. And I feel like there was a really like poignant period of time in my life coming out of college, um, like through college and like leaving college, where this CD was just like on constant rotation. And the song, She Was an American Girl, like has been just something that I always feel like would be in the soundtrack of my life. But I remember playing this CD when my dad drove me home from Iowa City one summer. Um, and tears were just streaming down my face because I felt like change has always been really super duper hard for me.
yeah.
But I just felt like such a sense of loss of like leaving my people and this like experience of college and like leaving a place where I just felt like I didn't have boundaries boxing me in, but I was like learning about who I was as a person. And so this was one of the things that just like popped into my mind where I was like, I remember driving home with my dad and just like crying and being like grateful for the experiences I was having in my life, but like mourning this idea that I was leaving it behind and like into the great wide open, under the skies of blue. And it's like you just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I picked that one.
I love that. And there are, I mean, I think music speaks to almost everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people that don't have music as a bedrock to certain aspects of their life. Um, I've got those musicians. For me, it's Dave
Yeah.
Matthews Band. It's been a journey of mine. I've seen them in concert 30 plus times. I have not seen them in quite some time, and I was just thinking, like, man, I need to go back and experience it. But like, it's gonna feel different because of just
Different.
the life journey that I've had since the last time I've seen Dave live. And then it's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Like, I don't know. Like, I
Mhm.
go to Dave for a good time, and it's like, and there's just those songs, right? Like that just
Yep.
that resonate, that hit, that they take you back to a moment of time where like, man, all the senses are alive. And
Yeah.
Tom Petty is also Tom Petty reminds me. I think I like Tom Petty more than this band, but I'm gonna put out another band. Like when you think about like Genesis or Phil Collins, like
Oh my
it was the
God.
band. Like right. Like you don't always like queue it up
Yes.
on your Spotify playlist, but like if Phil Collins wasn't in the every other song on the radio, growing like in my generation with my parents, like going to church or having to go for the home repairs, or we used to do like the parade of homes. Like no one was like begging for it, but yet it was always there. Like to me, it's like there it is, and you know those songs. You know,
Yep.
even if it comes from The Hangover or whatever your entry point is to the music.
Yeah.
But it's like those are I've got those vivid memories of Phil
Yeah.
Collins and Genesis brings me back to like my youth where I was like in
Yeah.
a car and it felt like torture, and it's like it
It's
really
so
wasn't, but it's
interesting
so
that it's like it's your memories are so sensory, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and this is like just one of those senses that, like when was the last time you thought about Parade of Homes with your family?
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
time since talking through that. Yeah, and I also think it's interesting too, just thinking of music of there was a song that was on my Spotify. I don't know for those not listening, for those listening, if you haven't become addicted to Spotify's this AI algorithm thing
It's
called
insane.
Daylist, where it like changes the playlist on the day and the mood, and how it ironically knows exactly what you need is the greatest thing ever.
Mind bending.
I will also put a link in. We're sidebarring, but I like another article because the guy that created that Spotify actually fired and released, and I'm just like, this is great. It's like the greatest thing ever. So I'm gonna put a link, make sure he gets credit because he's got a website where he explains it all.
Wow.
Anyways, sidebar. Chasing squirrels here. There was a song that I never particularly enjoyed. I wasn't against it. I just never like listened to the. It hit me on a whole different level, and I think it's just like sometimes like music re-enters or like a good book re-enters your life,
Mm,
and holy cow, the lyrics now like hit in ways that before I was just like, nah,
didn't.
like it just wasn't needed in the moment. But now I'm like,
Yep.
oh my God, like this thing is like on loop every time I'm walking my dog, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like just I see why people love this song, 7, 8
Mm,
years ago. I didn't love it, but man, now I'm digging it because it's what the soul needs. So it's so, I mean, yeah, music is so
fascinating.
good, so good,
So
so
good.
good. I love it. I love it.
Good.
This is yeah, and we'll put a link in, make sure so everyone also listening to the slide deck so people can reference in case you are listening and you
Yeah.
want to know
That's
what we're
good.
talking about so people can check this out. All right.
All right.
Oh man, we got an orange one here. So this is
Oh gosh.
reflect on a recent shift in your perspective. We'll see what pops up here.
Like, why
This
does
is
my
kind of
screen
fun. This
hurt
is like
every
a
time? I know.
yeah. Oh, we got
Oh my God.
co-regulation. Holy bunkers. We're going deep here on a
Yeah.
Friday afternoon recording here.
Well, I think there are certain things that you just can't really appreciate until you are in a parent or until you are a parent or you are in a caretaking kind of role, right? So, this is all about behavior and how people are when they're dysregulated, right? Like this idea of when you are in a dysregulated state, it does not matter what happens. Like you're pretty much in your hind brain, your reptilian brain. You're in the feeling brain, right? You're not in your prefrontal cortex. You are not, there is no executive functioning happening, right? And so I learned about co-regulation because my son is actually, we have found he's always been just an interesting kid, right?
Yep.
But as he's gotten older, especially post COVID, we noticed, well, probably during COVID and then post COVID, we just noticed some behaviors. And turns out that he has been diagnosed with a couple of things. One is just a generalized anxiety with transition disorder, which I think a lot of kids have, a lot of grown-ups have. Like I have anxiety about transitions.
Yeah.
And it's not about that thing. It's not about that name or like whatever. It's like what happens in your brain and your body when you're experiencing that. And then he also has recently been diagnosed with something called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is basically this crazy, it's like kind of newish on the scene. Medical doctors don't recognize it, but the American Academy of Pediatrics or Psychology does. And it's basically like neurobiological, this idea that if he's not good at something or he's being like criticized or like feels like he's not in a safe environment, the behavior like is crazy. And so we started getting him into therapy, and his therapist has been amazing, but she taught us about co-regulation. And the idea of co-regulation is you have to be the calm to their storm, and that looks different for other kids, right? So I think a lot of like the original response to situations when kids' behavior is escalating, they're getting loud, they're crying, they're whatever, it's like it is human nature to match that, right? Like you have a threshold of tolerance, and then it's like, "Wah!"
Yeah.
That's more dysregulating. And like when kids are in that emotional sense, like they don't hear you. It's noise, right? It's not helpful. And so the idea of co-regulation with Oliver is like it's been like kind of it's been a road, but we can't talk to him. We just have to sit there and like even say things like, "You're safe. I'm here for you when you're ready." Like, "You're safe. I love you. I'm here for you when you're ready," because he was doing things like destroying his room, um, even turning like this angst inward on himself, like self-harm,
Right.
suicidal ideation. And it's this idea of like, he doesn't have the words to say what his behavior is communicating, but like it does not help him for us to amp up either, right? And that's the natural response. So co-regulation is this idea of like, I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to help you, whatever that looks like, until you are calm and you are ready to like do the next thing. And it has been life changing because it's like people want to punish, people want to remove kids from classrooms, people want to blame XYZ. But it's like sometimes kids just need the time to regulate. They have to feel their body and their mind and know like this is going to help me, this is not going to help me. I think as kids get older, that's more helpful. Because when they're young, they're all they are is just feelings, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know that I explained that very well, but
No,
it's
it does.
been a
Yeah,
life changer.
so I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with exactly that. I mean, one, thanks for sharing the idea and a little bit of insight into your story. If people want to, I mean, I know the easy answer is Google it, but like if people want to learn more about this, because I think this is, I mean, even me, maybe I'm selfishly asking, like, where do you go to learn more? I mean, you're talking about this kind of maybe a newerish kind of arena of what this looks like, or how to get
Mhm.
started. Are there like main places to go? Are there any? I mean, if not, don't worry about it. We'll cut this piece out. Um, if
Yeah.
people do want to learn more about this, I think it is fascinating. I mean, I'm thinking through my own parenting.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about being in schools. I mean, I'm just thinking about just
Mhm.
general respect for people.
For humans,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
like when you think about in classrooms, how many times do we see the signs of dysregulation happening, and for whatever reason it's either we don't believe in the fact that this should be allowed, we
mm,
don't have the skill to combat it, we maybe don't have empathy, whatever the mental model is around what you think about kids and their behavior, a lot of times it goes to blame.
yeah,
So I would just like, I mean, yes, I Googled it. I think social workers are great people to tap into. Um, a lot also has to do with like mindfulness,
yeah,
right?
right,
And like, I don't want to even like go down this road, but this idea that we're looking at eliminating social emotional learning, like if my son didn't have the opportunity to learn about himself with a therapist and like what his triggers are, how his body feels when he's starting to feel this way, being able to talk about like what helps him, like we wouldn't be where we are today.
yeah,
So yes, a simple Google on co-regulation. I even think if you get into neurodiversity, like if you were like, how do we like like it's anxiety, ADHD,
yeah,
anything that you could think of under this like neurodiversity umbrella, autism. Co-regulation is something that is like touted as not like a wonder drug, and it's not even just a band-aid, like it's somewhere in between. It's like I see you as a human in your condition and I love you through it and I'm not judging you and I can't fix it for you. I'm going to sit in it with you until you feel like you can take the next step, right? So
yeah,
social workers, obviously like school psychology, mindfulness, all those things I think will get you around this idea of co-regulation, which I didn't even know was a word
Yeah.
until like 3 years ago.
Yeah. And it gets me thinking too about there's an awesome educator guy that does a lot of speaking and talking. His name's Dwayne Matthews, and I came across him just through like the AI landscape of trying to learn more about implications of artificial intelligence. And something that he talks about a lot that, as people are talking about AI, but really what he said we should have the bigger issues is like, what the number one killer of people are is it's a heart disease. He's like, so we're talking about AI and some of his cases, he brings a lot of valid points to the surface is why aren't we talking about the fact that kids sit for almost 8 hours a day in school? And so it kind of connects to this co-regulation because I'm also thinking about this is not a blame on teachers. I just think there's so much pressure and so much scripted, there's so much curriculum, so much data, like all these things, like the idea, like almost like recess is seen as taboo. I believe in play and getting hands-on engaged and inquiry, and I'm just thinking like all these types of things where kids and adults can learn about themselves, learn about how to work through those things. And man, we're just so much pressure that we just have kids in desk or they're sitting on the carpet for a long period of time, or whatever the thing might be. Like it seems easier than ever before to become dysregulated because
Oh yeah.
we're confining ourselves. And I think educators feel that way. We talk about burnout and fatigue. I don't think we name it the same way, but the amount of people leaving the profession, like where's that professional wow factor where like Lisa Hawker gets to be Lisa Hawker and
Oh
Aaron gets to be Coffee Chug. And I used to talk
yeah.
about, I mean, a long time ago, like what's your wow? Or like at a middle school, every time you walk into a room should be a new experience. Doesn't mean it's the experience is for every single kid, but it can't feel like pastel prisons either. As
Mhm.
former student of mine used to say, we're like, you can't walk into every room and it feels all the same. Like I
Yeah.
think that there's something that dysregulation, like we're playing a part in that too with how school feels for a lot of people, adults
Yes.
and kids.
Yeah, just the affect, the energy when you said like pastel, like I think about the word institutionalized all
Mm,
the time. Like
yeah,
like and adding color and windows is one very small thing that you could
yeah,
do, right?
right, right.
And again to this point of like we wonder why kids sometimes just get up out of their seats. It's like they're responding to a physiological impulse. Like their body is saying, I need to move.
Yeah,
I need some sensory input. Whatever that is. It's not it's like shifting the mindset like, well, so and so is disruptive to our class. Like, yes, that probably is disruptive if it's not a practice that you allow. Like flexible seating is one super easy way to help kids regulate with very minimal energy, right?
yeah,
Like just let them choose how their body is going to be.
yeah.
I don't know.
It's
Anyway,
crazy. It's craziness. Yeah, there's a whole lot of things we could get into on that one
a
right there. And
whole lot of
it's
things.
yeah, I know. I talk about AI and cheating, and I want to get to it. Make sure we get to a next topic. And I've been telling people like, how you avoid that is sound instructional practices. Like, have you thought about like station rotation and inquiry and focus on the process and check-ins and talking with kids in small groups and oral presentations and Socratic seminar? Like,
Yep.
you don't need an AI tool to defeat AI cheating. To me, you have a bigger issue on how are we delivering instruction, and there are some things that have been around for the test of time.
Yep.
You don't need a new strategy. We just need to maybe look at things that we know work and continue to do that. And
And so much of that is what the belief system is of the
yeah,
human and their
yeah,
mental model that exists around what education should look like. And like
yeah,
sometimes you can't coach people up or out of that, you know?
right. You're
And
right.
our kids are the collateral damage every
Yeah,
single time.
yeah, yeah. So true. Unfortunately, it's so true.
So true.
Okay, let's segue into here something that sparked some excitement in you, and we've got a link to a little bit of
Oh
love.
my gosh.
So you want to explain what this? I'm going to click on it. I don't know if it'll
Yeah.
show if I can multitask all these things at once, but I will definitely have a link. It is a reference to. Well, I'll let
Weezer.
you introduce it. It's your idea, so you go
Yeah.
for it. I'll make sure. Yeah. So
So
I've got it
this,
pulled up, but I don't think you people can see it on the screen. So
okay. Can you play it though? Like if you
y-
play it, will the
yeah,
sound go?
let's give it a shot. Let's see. Go ahead and talk, and I'll get it going
Okay.
here.
So this is a Weezer song, and it is one of the most uplifting things that I have in my life right now. And it's probably been there ever since I discovered this song. So again, like this idea of like AI and algorithms, like music, things finding you. Like I love Weezer. They put out an album of covers over COVID. And so that started like I started intentionally putting that into my rotation. And so then, like when you are on YouTube, it just like pops up like, oh, so a little bit of love found me that way. And
Are you able to hear it?
turn up a little bit more. So that's like the intro to the song.
I love it.
And kind of like you mentioned this about how a song from like 8 years ago meant nothing to you, but now it's like on a loop. And so I think about how based on your life experiences and like who you are in a given moment, the interpretation of things changes. So my husband is so I don't know how you feel about the book The Five Love Languages, but it was something that really helped me like connect to just like how I am and like my own behavior versus like my partner's behavior. And like this guy is like written by like an ex-pastor. Like there's a lot of like controversy around it, which is okay, right? Like I'm not like I don't live and die by this book. It was just something that helped me again shift my thinking. But so my husband is like a quality timer, like physical touch kind of guy. And I am not that. Like, and when I say physical touch, like I could literally like put my hand on his shoulder and that would like fill his bucket for like 3 weeks. Like I could hold his hand, like a hug, like any of like that is his love language. And mine is like I do things for people. And I typically don't feel feelings like that. And I don't slow down and I'll think things, but I won't say them about like, man, this guy's awesome or gosh, I love my kids or whatever. And so I heard this song and it made me think about my husband. Like for him, like a little bit of love just goes a super long way, right? So it's like I put this song on to help remind me that like what I do makes a difference, right? Like my behavior makes a difference. But just last night, Erin, I sent this song to a group of colleagues. We have this like little text. There's like 5 or 6 of us. And there's parts of this song that is like there's a part that says like you got knocked down, you kept going, right? And how like you can change your perspective and how a little bit of love can like get people through some really hard times and like based on where we are at our current job situation and people are just super duper struggling. Like people are crying all the time and I just was like I mean, yeah, I had a couple glasses of Pinot Grigio and I was like I'm going to send this to my friends because it makes me feel good. And there are lines to that song that are like, we can do this, right?
Yeah.
Like we can do this. We get knocked down all the time and we pick ourselves back up and we just keep going, right? So that's why I put that song in here.
So good. So
Yeah, I love it.
Weezer's kind of like our Phil Collins like
Yes.
background. I mean, everybody knows a Weezer song, whether you know a Weezer song or not.
Exactly.
And I mean, and Rivers just drops songs and lyrics like
Love.
wildfires. So good.
I'm sure you have the collaboration he has with B.O.B.
Yes.
I got the magic in me. And that's another one that's like, hey, we got this. We all have our superpower. We all have our own magic. Like, we can do this.
Yeah, so good. So definitely, if you guys haven't listened to that song, make sure you check out the link and listen to the whole song
I love it.
and the lyrics, however you get your music. Hey, so I want to make sure that we do one of the main topics, and if we have time for another one of these, we'll definitely jump in. But when we originally connected, you had something you want to talk about called Scarf, and I want to make sure that we do build in time for that because that's how we originated through these conversations. And so I'm not going to hit the button because I don't know where it's going to take us next. So I'll keep the screen here, but I do want to make sure we build some time since I see our time is kind of running towards the end here. So
I know.
what is Scarf? For those, I clicked and looked on it because you were sharing some things, but I know it's not what I put around my neck around wintertime, even though unfortunately it's snowing and we might need that when I have to go walk my dog here a little bit. That's gross. But Scarf is something different that is something of interest to you. It probably fall into one of the it's in the main category there of things that you are enthusiastic about, things you're
Yeah.
excited about learning. So Scarf, what is it? Talk to me about it.
So our colleague Ann Craig actually introduced me to this, gosh, probably like 10 years ago. And it has really, human behavior and social constructs was the very first thing we talked about. The SCARF article is from a neuropsychology journal. And it really talks like about the psychology of human behavior. And it talks about how most people, when they feel a threat response, like when somebody does something or says something and you start feeling defensive, like that's like a threat response. That feeling of defense is your indicator that you are experiencing some sort of threat response. So this article talks about how there are 5 main kind of domains, if you will, to kind of categorize these threat responses. So the first, this is an acronym, SCARF. S stands for status. C stands for certainty. A is for autonomy. R is relatedness. And F is fairness. So I actually was presenting this morning to some ed consultants, and this was not even the topic, but what we were talking about was how the adult behavior matters in how like positive a student outcome will be, right?
Yeah.
And so for this particular presentation, we were talking about fidelity of implementation, okay? And grown-ups don't like the word fidelity, and they certainly don't like it when people come in and check on them, right? And so some of that is culture and just this idea that we don't have a culture of feedback or trust, right? So there's that whole thing, which could be a whole other conversation and podcast. But these particular professionals, like that's kind of their job, is to like coach people up or to suggest new things, and how a lot of times we get just met with pushback and brick walls. And so the question was, it wasn't really a question, it was a statement like, okay, I try to coach people up, I say this, and like no one does it, right? So I kind of stopped this idea of around intervention and intervention intensification. And I said, okay, we deal with humans, right? There is a human response. There's a reason why people do that, right? And so I said, SCARF is a perfect model to run through for you to reflect on what is it that's making this person feel this way. So M, is their status feeling threatened? Like whether or not it's because they're the principal or they've been there for 18 years or they have more education than you. Is that where the pushback is coming from? Is certainty the area? Like they don't know, right? Maybe, and they're afraid to say, I don't know. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the skills. I don't know why you're asking me to do this. I don't know what the impact is going to be. Whatever. Autonomy is like, is that the threat? Like you're taking away my autonomy to decide what I should be doing and what it should be looking like, right? Relatedness, like how does this relate to me? Like, is this even something I feel like is my job, right? Like, how do all of the arrows come in and then this is the decision? And then F is fairness. Like sometimes people are just like, it's not fair. I'm doing all these other things. Now you're asking me to do this and it's not fair. So when we can kind of pinpoint what that threat response is, then we can be strategic in our response, right? And like this is even something we can do with our partner, like our significant other. It's something we could do in a team. It's something I could do by myself when I'm like trying to troubleshoot or plan for a conversation. What is the thing that could potentially be making this person act that way? And it's usually pretty easy, right? Like for me, it's usually status or it's certainty or it's fairness. And so when I can pinpoint what that is, like my reaction changes, like my response changes, my approach changes. And, some people might call that manipulative. We have a colleague named Stephanie who is great at shifting language. And she says, Lisa, that's not manipulative, it's strategic, right? You are determining a strategy to support this adult based on their potential threat response. Now, the complex change matrix is also another really great one. We might see frustration, we might see anxiety, we might see resistance. And this idea is that there's kind of an equation for success, right? When you're trying to start something new, where you're trying to change something, resources, vision, incentives, skills, an action plan. If one of those things is missing, it is almost guaranteed that a specific behavior will show itself. And so some of this between the complex change matrix and the SCARF model is that we as humans have to be aware, right? We have to be able to be socially aware. We have to be able to pick up on things, and we have to not take it personally so that we can stay in a problem solving mode and figure out which way do I want to go to like help.
Well, first, thanks for explaining through all that for people to better understand. I feel like we've magically kind of come full circle in a lot of the things that we've talked about through the random PowerPoint generator. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking about we've all been in meetings, whether that's with colleagues. In our role, we work with districts, but no matter where we work professionally, no matter how we live personally with our families or friends or whatever our makeup of our personal lives might be, you're talking through that scarf and it helps us kind of like identify the issue at hand, like the real issue. Like there's usually an issue that is then causing the issue of scarf, whatever the element might be.
Yep.
And that leads to dysregulation. I mean, going back to your co-regulation thing, and we start to see that and we manifest behaviors and attitudes and comments and words differently, right? Well, as we get older, sometimes we can name it. We talk about like, Brene Brown's work, you got to name it to tame it. Like I know
Yep.
sometimes kids can't do that. Sometimes as adults, we can't do that either, but we can name it and we still go forth because we are dysregulated, maybe act and do things that maybe isn't the best of nature and how we should, and then I'm thinking of then earlier, our very first thing talking about just the norms. And sometimes as we try to work through new ideas, we get caught up and constantly want to keep doing the same things over and over. And I was reading, there's a great book that I'm reading right now called Clear Thinking. And in there, it's kind of like my aha, and I don't know how you pull it off in the way we work, but he talks about in problem solving, you have two meetings. And meeting one is only to identify the problem. And so often we move into solution focused ideas and we haven't actually addressed the real problem. And as you're talking, I'm thinking like that just further supports that, where like you have one meeting and that meeting is probably going to be really short because you can probably identify it, whether that's using any of these tools, the matrix you talked about or SCARF, and you identify the problem. And as soon as you identify it, that's it. The meeting's over.
Yep.
Part two then you have a follow-up meeting, and that's where you are solution focused. And that's done and designed in a way to like not try to solve a problem that isn't actually the problem. And what I liked about that, and as you're talking and thinking through like those tools you've talked about would help people, I think, truly get to the heart of the issue of what is the problem that we're actually trying to tackle. It's not usually said curriculum, said strategy or implement, whatever the thing might be. It's usually that human side that there's something else of why people are resisting.
Yeah.
And
I think it also
really
depends on your seat on the bus, right? Like I actually am leading a work team of secondary teachers to identify what they consider the problem for them instructionally.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you don't use a tool or a framework, it turns into this session, this gripe session, and like everyone's feeling it and you can't get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like people are like, I finally had the opportunity to be with people who feel the way I do, and it's just like, bleh.
Yeah.
And so we get to have emotion, but that doesn't help us identify problems and it doesn't help us solve the problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It that reminded me of another part to this kind of two-part thing that this guy was talking about in the book. He talks about when you're identifying the problem, the rule in play that you have to have so it doesn't become exactly what you said is you can only add to the conversation on something that hasn't already been said.
Mm,
And so if someone's already addressed your concern, even if everybody feels it, we don't need 15 more people to say it. Like
yeah.
it's already been said. So you can only add a new thought, a new layer, something that hasn't been addressed.
Yeah.
And that is how you keep the meeting shorter or the conversation shorter and focused, because we can definitely feed off the energy and we can spin our wheels and get ourselves worked up and
Yeah.
not actually attend to being solution focused. And
Well,
to me, I was like, that's all you really need for the one rule. Like, hey, we're going to identify the problem
yeah.
and here's how we're going to do it, man. Once
Yeah.
Aaron says that part, we don't need an echo
We're
chamber.
done. Yep.
Now, what else do we have to add? If that's it, and everyone feels that way, guess what? Problem solved. Or
That's
not
so
problem, not
crazy.
problem not solved. Problem is
Identify.
identified,
Yeah.
and we might be done in 5 minutes, or there
Mm-hmm.
might be a lot of layers, and so then we need to know all that so we can figure out then to make sure what is the actual problem. And so I mean,
Yeah.
it's not life isn't that easy, but as I'm reading through
No.
this book, I'll put a link in the notes for it. It's
Yeah.
like gosh, sometimes we like to overcomplicate with lots of things, and
Yeah.
at least to get the initial ideas out like that could work.
I think this goes back to human behavior. People
Yeah.
just want to be seen and they want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so creating structures for people to be seen and heard, but not perseverate upon the crap that's happening,
Right.
in a controlled environment has almost the same output. It just looks and feels different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Man, we didn't even get close to half of these
I
topics.
know.
But people have access. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time here.
Sure.
Are there any I'm going to stop screen sharing here just so we can wrap this up together. But were there any that you had in there that you really, really wanted to highlight? I'll make sure people have a link to all the ideas because they're great. You've got some awesome books in there. There's some other great ideas. But I also know it would take us probably 3 hours to get through that. And we
It really
also have
would.
other things to do.
I don't think I have anything that was like burning. The scarf obviously was the thing that made us go down this road, but what I appreciate about this format is that it really does feel like we're like sitting down and like having a cup of joe and just
Yeah.
catching up, right? And so
Yeah.
I don't know. I had a really great time. It was nice to even just spend time like with you as a friend,
Yeah.
even though we're not in the same room. Like our paths never cross, and I just appreciate you creating space. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking time to put the ideas down. I think if nothing else, people are going to be really intrigued to know what your other things are that are on here that we didn't get to. And so it might be some good next time people see Lisa Hogger that know you. They're going to have
I love it.
some good food. Like, tell me more about that you guys didn't get to.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I've been asking everybody in this new season of the podcast, ending with this last question is, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you ever received?
Well, there's two. One is don't let that person or that thing live rent-free in your head, which is easier said than done. And the other one is like when someone shows you who they are, like believe it the first time. Like, and also like trust yourself. Like when you encounter someone who does something nasty to you, like your body knows that's like you feel that feeling, and it's like you should believe them the first time. Like believe them that's who they are.
Yeah.
For good and for bad, know?
Right.
Yeah.
And believe your intuition. I mean,
yeah.
Believe them and believe yourself that your body knows. I think it's just kind of like as kids, right? Kids know what's up. We don't lose that when we get older. We like to maybe kind of bury it, but I think that sense that it's
like
there.
If the whisper is there, pay attention before it becomes a scream.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that. I think it kind of all goes together. But yeah, I would say those are the things, and those are the things that I want to make sure I instill in my kids young.
Right. Yeah.
Because I learned them the hard way as an adult.
Yeah. Sometimes unfortunately, that's the way we have to learn some life lessons, unfortunately. And not everything is, but yeah, we can instill those mindsets and values so they can become more self-aware. So it's not a repeatable infraction on our overall well-being, mean, those are the key. How do we equip them with the tools to be the best version of
Get through
themselves?
life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. Lisa, this has been so wonderful. I'm glad we were able to record all this. As like, I agree with you. I wish you could be in person. I just don't have the tech savvy skills to figure all that out.
Perfect.
But this has been so great. Thank you for the prep
Yeah.
ahead of time and engaging in these conversations and opening up the human side of you. You know, if people want to learn more about you or explore your work, you know, are there places for them to follow, reach out, places like that? Is there anything like that for those that are people listening will know you? And there are also lots of people that, you know, are
Yeah.
just meeting you for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a big social media presence. I'm not like widely published, but I do respond to emails, you know. And I'm happy to support people in anything professionally, or even if it was like, hey, tell me more about that thing. Like, yeah, so I don't have like a Twitter handle. I mean, I do, but I haven't logged into Twitter for
No,
a really long time. So yeah, I'm old school
no,
when
it's
it
good.
comes to that.
Nothing
So,
wrong. Nothing wrong being protected. Nothing
yep.
wrong. I
Oh,
think.
that's a
I
good
think. I
point.
think a lot of people are moving back to that direction. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I will put a link in the show notes to our agency, so if people are interested and they don't have
Yeah.
your email, they can. But I won't blast it out there so all the internet scraping doesn't consume, and all of a sudden you get emails from whatever. So
As long as it's not a bot, I'm okay with it.
yes, yes. So we
Yeah.
will. I'll put a link to where you can reach out to any of us
Yeah.
or the colleagues that you mentioned. And as people know, all links will be in the show notes, all that good stuff. And so, Lisa, again, thank you
Awesome.
so much for your time. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.